Nice. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful JSConf. I would like to introduce the lovely members of the TC39 who are joining us today to answer some questions. It would be great if you could each introduce yourselves and mention who you're representing on the TC39.
Hi, I'm Matthias, and I work on V8 at Google.
I'm Aki, and I work at PayPal.
I'm Justin Ridgewell. I work for Google. I'm also one of the core contributors to Babel.
I'm Keith Circle, and I work for GitHub.
Hi, I'm Mariko. I also work at Google's Web Developer Relations team.
I'm Lynn Clark. I work at Mozilla.
Andrew Paprocki. I work at Bloomberg.
Till Schneiderbreit, also at Mozilla.
I am Leo. I work at Boku. I'm the maintainer of Test 262.
Now, we've got a lot of really fantastic people representing a diverse number of companies and groups. But in fact, there's even more people here. They're among you. We have a number of TC39 members who are not on stage. If they could just stand up and wave hello. Yeah. Yeah. So if we don't manage to get to your question, please come and see us after this panel, and we'd love to talk to you. We'll be hanging around the community lounge just behind the Google booth. Everyone knows where the community lounge, so come say hi. So without further ado, let's get started with the panel. And I'm going to start with a question that the JSConf EU team had for us, which is date.parse. They had an issue with the website in that iOS wouldn't scroll down to the right spot. And the question is, date.parse, who did it wrong, V8 or Chrome?
I can take that one. So I encourage everyone in the room to go to their DevTools console, maybe after this talk, and try out date.parse 1 Octopus 2018. It works in Chrome, it works in JSC and Safari, but nowhere else. And it turns out that, based on the spec, everyone is right. Like, there are certain date formats that are guaranteed to work in all browsers, according to the spec at least. But when the format is not matched, then it's basically up to the implementation. So that's why some implementations return nan, and others actually still try to parse the date.
Thank you. Before we go any further, let's talk about what we're actually doing. So Matthias just gave us a great explanation about what the spec is. It's not an implementation, but it sort of tells us how to implement a JavaScript engine. So let's just talk about what the TC39 is actually doing and what a spec is. Does anyone want to talk about what the process is or how TC39 works?
No.
Well, I'll start with how TC39 works, and I'll let someone else to explain the stages of the process. But we are a committee of delegates who are representing members in ECMA International. We get together every 2 months, and we usually meet for 3 days. We discuss what proposals are up. We talk about the impact of the language. We discuss what changes need to be made, and we operate on consensus, which means that we all have to agree for something to move forward, which is pretty unique in programming language standards. So that's kind of like the basic gist of what TC39 is and does. Somebody else want to go through the proposal process?
Sure. So there's 4 stages. Stage 0 is like a pseudo stage that is just a proposal exists. Stage 1 is that the committee has considered that this is a problem space that we want to continue to explore and find a solution for. Stage 2 is that there's a draft specification. So there is some spec text that identifies what the behavior should be. Stage 3 says that there should be significant in the field implementations. In other words, some browsers or other engines should have implemented this feature, and stage 4 means that it's ready to land in the spec. Every year, we make a cut of all of the stage 4 features that land that are stage 4 by a particular date, which I think is somewhere around March, and by around June time, that spec for that year is released. So we're close to releasing ES 2018, which will have several stage 4 features that were stage 4 back in January.
if I can add to that also, I'm a somewhat newer member of this process, and I think it's important to mention that the meeting happens, those 3-day meetings every 2 months happens where we discuss like stage advancements and consensus thinking stuff, but actual conversation about how the spec should be spec and how the text should be written happens all the time. This is not like every 2 months we pick up like, right, 2 months ago, where did we left off? It's not. It's usually just the meetings that we have 3 days are more like, okay, here's what has been happening on GitHub on the TC39 organization for 2 months. Let's decide on how to move forward.
Yeah. Great. So we had a couple of community questions about like how the speccing process works. And one person asked, is JavaScript evolving at the right speed? Are new features being sufficiently integrated with other new and existing features?
Yes.
I think one proposal that might be a really great one to sort of illustrate how this works is the class proposal. And we also had a couple of questions to maybe help shape this. So one person asked, what's going on with the private method? We've got the hash sign, which is used to express private. Most other languages use the private keyword. How do we come up to this point that we're using the hash sign?
Okay, so when we consider private, we have to consider 2 parts. There's the private access, which allows you to get the private property off of an object, and then there is the private declaration. And the reason we came upon this decision is because every other language that has private is also statically typed. So you can figure out exactly what the property is based on the object it's being called on. For JavaScript, we don't have that. We have no way of knowing what the object is or whether it's supposed to be a private property or a public property based on just the base reference, that this dot object dot whatever. So we have to have a different sigil to distinguish private property access from public property access. And that's how we came upon the dot hash, whatever the property name is, for accessing the properties. And then to mirror access, we decided that the declaration should also include the hash symbol. So it makes it very clear up front that this is the part of the name that, the way that you access it is you pretend that the hash is just part of the name. So if it's hash prop, you access it by this dot hash prop. So it's kind of like you think about it as if the hash is just the name, not that it actually distinguishes the private modifier key or anything else.
Nice. And the private class field was being proposed as a single proposal. However, there were several other class-related proposals that were being proposed at the same time, such as public fields. How was the communication across those proposals?
We do a lot of work to make sure these 2 features are synchronized. We actually split them and then merge them and then split them and merge them again between public and private and instance and static properties. Just trying to figure out all the different issues that could happen with either of them. And then once we settled upon the semantics that we were happy with, we've merged them all again.
Awesome. So I think a natural question that would follow this, like we've got this hash symbol now, but this could be confusing to newcomers. And another person has asked us over Twitter, with these new operators and features being added to JavaScript, are we at risk for becoming too cryptic syntax-wise for new developers? I'm very much in favor of them, but web development is being very approachable is a big boon.
I guess say it's something that does come up in the meetings. It's referred to as the syntax budget, that there's only so much syntax you can add to a language before it just becomes ASCII gibberish. So it is very much a concern, and everybody pays a lot of attention to it, and we try to make all of these proposals fit together as a whole.
And this is also why syntax proposals are different from just new API methods on like array prototype or something like that, because those are things you can look up and then you already know how to call a function or how to call a method on an array, for example. But whenever there's new syntax, that imposes a burden on developers to actually learn to recognize this new syntax and all its meanings. So syntax is more complicated to learn as a newcomer than it is to just call another method.
And maybe this is also a good point for another note on the process. One thing we are trying as a middle ground between design by committee, either achieving nothing because it results in constant deadlock, or achieving sort of, okay, I get my feature in, so you get yours in, and we get this explosion of features that maybe nobody really needs. We have the so-called champions model. So all proposals have one or more champions who work on really developing the feature and present it to the committee. And by and large, the committee overall does not do the design. It needs to achieve consensus, but it's not like everybody gets to chime in and say, but I want this tweak in, and this syntax should be slightly different, and then I'm happy. And in practice, that works out fairly well to achieve a manageable complexity budget.
Another question that's going around, like the general development of how JavaScript is designed, is a question around what is JavaScript's identity? Like, are we moving towards other non-strongly typed programming languages, for example, object-oriented concepts like ES6 classes, or more functional? This also is tied to, like, where are we going as a goal in JavaScript? Like, what are we aiming for?
I think, I believe JavaScript has a very strong notation on all the behaviors that it does around the types that are well defined in JavaScript. But I think the being a dynamic type language is one of the highlights of JavaScript itself. I don't see this thing happening for now. I don't expect this happening on TC39. I think that's a highlight, and we should consider all the advantages from using from a dynamic language and a typed language. Both are fine, but we are on the right place here.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that this is to some extent a false distinction. More modern languages like Swift or Rust are really heavily influenced by both object orientation and functional design patterns, and you really take the best of these worlds and make a well-designed overall languages that allows people to express their logic in ways where it makes sense instead of having to cram it into some notion of purity.
So one topic that came up quite a bit on Twitter was, of course, about types, but it was also about TypeScript, ReasonML, PureScript, and Babel. These are all things that transpile to JavaScript. So JavaScript isn't necessarily pure, but do these other languages that adopt different paradigms than what JavaScript have, how much does this influence our work on the language in general?
I think it's great to have all of these languages, even if they're targeting JavaScript. I believe they allow the community to bring feedback, as these languages allow some sandboxing we cannot do directly on JavaScript. And we can play with these languages with features that we want, and we can make proof that they are really necessary if we want to bring this to JavaScript. From my experience, this already brought a lot of nice, interesting features that we already have today in JavaScript, and I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe on one of the fields where there is a lot of experimentation in compiled to JS languages, that is types, there are obviously TypeScript and Flow, but also quite a few other languages that add types to JavaScript or JavaScript-like languages. And so the question comes up, why aren't we adding types to the language itself? And the reason is quite simply, we don't believe that anybody has come up with a design that works well enough for JavaScript and is really universal enough that we are comfortable taking up the huge design space. So really, you add types to a language once. You don't do that multiple times. So this is a huge decision. And so it's fantastic that we have this ecosystem of compiled to JS languages that can do all the experimentation they want, and people can decide to pave the cow paths on this and hopefully eventually we'll converge on a design where we feel like, yes, this really fits the language, this is what we should add to the standard itself.
And we also have some people who are working within the Wasum community group. It would be really great to hear about what's the relationship between JavaScript and Wasum as compile targets.
So one of the nice things, we were talking about the explosion of features in JavaScript earlier. One of the nice things about having WebAssembly as a complement to JavaScript is that for some of the features that don't make sense in JavaScript, you can actually use WebAssembly as the home for that feature, where it might make more sense. And so I'd say that WebAssembly and JavaScript really are complementary as compile targets and not, as some people think, competitors.
And this also affects types, again, directly, because for good interaction with WebAssembly, that isn't extremely low level on the linear memory as an exchange heap level, you want to have the ability to talk about the type system from both sides. And there are efforts around making that possible. They don't actually need syntax for those types, which might be a bit surprising at first. This is something where over the next few months or so, certainly within this year, we will have more things to show.
One thing we got requested from the audience via Twitter is that we talk more closely into the mic, so let's try to do that. Okay. So, people have also been asking some things that are just ideas about what the future of JavaScript could be like. And one person's asked, can we have something like a module keyword that makes bundling a first-class citizen of JavaScript and allow a single JS file to expose multiple modules as an interface?
Yeah, come see me, because I have a proposal in the works for that. So yes, we can have that.
So moving on to another topic. So over the last year, we sort of had a bit of a situation. And someone asks, can you share your perspectives on flatten versus smoosh debate?
I can give some history here. So what happens is that there was a proposal to add flatten and flatmap to the array prototype. And when it got to stage 3 and Mozilla implemented it and started to ship it in Firefox nightly, they realized that it was actually breaking certain web pages. They relied on this particular implementation not being there. So of course, this is kind of the worst thing that can happen to a proposal. Like when we ship it, we don't want to break the web. This is not acceptable. So Mozilla unshipped it, but then we had to go back to the drawing board, and we knew we had to change the proposal in some way. And in this case, because the name itself was the problem, specifically for flatten, we had to rename it somehow. And then the proposal author decided to send a joke pull request to his proposal, renaming it to smoosh and smooshmap. And you all know what happened next. It was not clear that it was a joke, and some people got really upset. And I think we learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
I think other people can speak better as to what happened next.
I mean, we had a TC39, like those 3-day meeting right after that, that event. And I think all of our consensus was like, yes, like we learned a lot from this interaction, certain things that we can present, certain ways that we communicated with community. And it's unfortunate that happened, but we learned, and hopefully we will never do the same thing.
And one thing that I personally learned from this is that for a lot of people, it's not clear that TC39 is actually representing the developer community as well. In fact, some people are entirely just attending these meetings only specifically to do that. And during Smooshgate, it felt like people felt like it was an us versus them kind of thing, which is not the case at all. So we should work on clarifying that, and there's definitely a lot of work that we can do there, but we're trying.
I think that's actually a huge thing that we took away from that, was realizing that we need to be more obvious about the fact that we as individuals are involved in TC39, because we are humans, we're people. We're people who work on libraries, we're people who work on websites, we're people who work on browsers, and like we are human beings who might make a joke sometimes, but because it's not super obvious to the community that we are doing what we're doing and who is doing what we're doing. It's pretty easy to forget that. It's just like some nefarious council somewhere making the rules.
That no one can attend. So there's a couple of people wondering, like, how do they get involved? Like, how does someone who's new actually start talking to the TC39?
So we have all of our proposals on the GitHub, TC39 repo organization. You can get involved in any one of the proposals by opening issues, by commenting, by trying to make sure your use case is served. Or you can contribute to Babel to actually get these things implemented so that you can use them in your code.
And a related question to this is someone asking about when writing up new features, like, for example, someone wants to propose something, where do you look the most for inspiration? Are there other languages, and which ones? Or is it mostly driven by requests from the community?
I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. But what I personally find works best is to actually start with a problem statement. Like, there's a certain problem that you want to solve, and then you motivate that problem itself. And then the solution can take various shapes. So at stage 0 especially, you don't want to come up and say, oh, I have this amazing solution to this problem. No, you just want to say, look, there is this problem. Do we agree that this is a problem in JavaScript? If so, then yes, OK, maybe we can go to stage 1 and discuss solutions. And maybe you already thought of some solutions, but it's important to focus on the problem rather than this one specific solution to the problem.
So I would like to add to that, saying that so again, like, there is a staging process and there is a champion. So usually it is not like we meet and then say, well, what's the problem in JavaScript community? What's like hard? No, somebody already came up like, I don't like this syntax, so this is like source of my bug. Like, you know, your proposal in like sometime about the arrays and getting the last item from array was like, you know, I constantly, you know, stumbled upon the bug because of this. I want to have new features. So I'm like proposing, is this a valid idea? Should we discuss this? And that's how things get into the staging process. So like you mentioned, I'm like me. I'm a person who is just going to TC39 meeting as like representing like web developer point of view, and I don't go to TC39 meeting because I have something to propose. Like, I'm more like, I want to listen to this conversation and make sure that like our views are reflected. So I feel really like inspired in a way. I'm in such a like JavaScript Stockholm syndrome that I think it's fine. Nothing should be changed. And then every time one of these fine people says like, I don't like this, or this is like really annoying, and then I'm like, it is annoying.
So
I was going to say, to the original question, once we have that problem statement and once we figured out that we want to solve it, from there is a combination of taking inspiration from other languages, figuring out if there's like a more JavaScript way to solve the problem. So it is a huge combination of all the different ways we could approach it. And we don't restrict ourselves to any one route.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question is related to information dissemination and like, how do people keep up with proposals specifically? Where do you keep up with updates? Do you have a website? And another question is, how do you visually track all of the new proposals through the maturity stages, maybe with Polyfill or a Babel plugin? And up until this point, we've had a GitHub repository, which was the TC39 proposals repository. But we noticed, especially during Smooshgate, that we had a bit of a communication problem with the developer community. It's hard to find information about proposals and what's going on. So what we've been doing for the last little while is we've been working on, I hope this works. No, this doesn't work. OK. What we've been working on as a result is this project, which also doesn't work when I use my mouse. Huh, fascinating. 1 second.
Undefined is not a function.
Everyone can look at the fancy Mozilla dinosaur. And there we go. That should work now. Oh, it doesn't. Fantastic. Let's try this one. Next slide. Oh, there we go. Sorry, everyone. So we have built a website for the community, and this is what it looks like. And it's in beta. It's something that we're working on. It's not complete. But what we would really love is to get feedback from the community if this is answering your questions and if this is doing what it needs to do. And if it's not, it would be great to have your feedback and your comments. And this could be a great first step for people who are interested in getting started working with TC39 and contributing. Hopefully this now works. It doesn't work. Whoops. Technical issues. No worries. I would like to say thank you to the contributors who made this possible within 3 months. You can find the URL there at the top if you want to visit it. And there is also a QR code here if you just want to scan it. So we are trying to improve the information issue. And namely, we are looking for feedback for this beta version of a potential community site. So moving on from the website issue and straight into the next section of this, which is just for fun. We got a lot of questions that were proposal specific that we can answer rather quickly. So we're going to do a rapid fire session. And let's do that with the TC39 logo. Yeah, there we go. Nice. We're going to have 3 minutes, and we're just going to answer these questions as quickly as we can. And if we missed your question, please come and say hi to us next to the community lounge within the next 3 minutes when we wrap up. So let's go. What are some of the most exciting features coming next?
Optional chaining.
All right, a couple of people can answer that one.
I personally love the matching pattern.
Yeah, pattern matching is awesome.
The class features.
Yes, nice.
I'm just excited about big-ins, like finally numeric, like integers that make sense, and you can do arithmetic on them, and you won't get the wrong result. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. What's your favorite JavaScript function?
Don't say smooth.
It's definitely flat, right? Everyone's favorite one is flat.
LA map and reduce.
Map and reduce, yeah. Okay, so this question is interesting. Local storage between subdomains would be awesome.
Not something TC39 is involved in. This is a DOM API, and TC39 really is only involved in the standardization of the language. Sometimes it's hard to say what exactly is language, what isn't, but in this case, it's about input-output, and that is not in the language at all.
Yeah. So if you had that question, go chat with the DOM API people, and maybe they can help you out. Next question. How about a native method for deep object cloning?
Good idea.
Very complex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to us. Come talk to us.
The next one is similar. Would love to have a non-expensive, non-library deep object comparison. Any hope on that?
Again, it's like, come talk to us. We can go through it. It's.
You want to write that proposal?
Go for it. What's the medium turnaround for a proposal become reality time-wise? Do proposals follow the same procedure? Well, yes, they follow the same procedure, but how long does it take about?
Some of them take years.
I think minimum I saw was like 18 months, maybe.
If you're feeling really ambitious, maybe a year, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say the minimum, the absolute minimum would be 1 stage per meeting. So maybe you can do it in 4 meetings, 5 meetings, like 8 to 10 months. But that's if there's no conflicts, everybody's on board, and it just moves right along.
Another thing is that in order to advance to stage 4, you need 2 shipping implementations in browsers, which is not always in the control of the champion or the author. Like, unless you want to go and implement this in 2 different JavaScript engines yourself, which is a lot of work on top of all the work you're doing writing the proposal, then you'll just have to wait until it happens, basically. And you can help with that by already writing tests and contributing tests to test 262, for example, so that these implementations can just check if they're correct or not easily. But still, someone needs to do the work and implement it.
We've got a couple of seconds left. Can we use emojis in function declarations?
Please.
Well, right now we can't because emoji are not valid identifiers. If you Google valid variable name validator in JavaScript, you'll find a tool that I built exactly for this purpose.
And we've got no time left for one more question. So please come and say hi to us behind the, next to the community booth, and we'd love to meet all of you. Thank you.